Hello there, my name is John Brown. I'm a product manager with Mobilize.net. Today I want to show you a demonstration of the coolest thing that we have. It's brand new. It's called WebMAP2, and it'll let you take your .net code all the way to HTML with JavaScript and CSS, cloud enabled. It's awesome. We're going to start today actually with VB, that legacy application that's sitting out there that you don't know what to do with. We're going to use an existing tool to take it to .net, and we're going to use our newest tool, WebMap, to move it from .net to HTML. We're going to do the whole thing in about 20 minutes. So let's get started. Here's a Visual Basic 6.0 application. It's a pretty typical VB app. You've probably seen stuff like this before. It's got grid controls that are bound to a database. The database is Access. It's an MDB file. We're using ADODB to connect to the database. We've got lots of controls. We've got lots of, it's MDI, we've got lots of forms and dialogues. This is about not quite 9,000 lines of code. Let's start by converting all of this VB code to C# running on .net using WinForms. We're going to use the Visual Basic Upgrade Companion to make this first step in the migration, this first jump, if you will. The VBUC has been around for a number of years. Microsoft actually shipped it with Visual Studio in an earlier form for a number of years up through Visual Studio 2010. This product has been used by literally thousands of people to convert possibly as much as 1 billion lines of code from Visual Basic 6 to either VB.net or C#. So let's do this right now. We're going to start by creating a new solution. We're just going to point it to our VB application. Once we do this, the VBUC is going to scan that VB project and all of the files. It's going to find all the dependencies like these OCXs and these DLLs. It's going to make sure that it can actually locate those physical components in the project tree. If it can't, you won't see this green check mark over here. You'll need to find that external reference so that we can actually migrate the code. We can actually go through and look at how we're going to upgrade every single piece that's in here. For example, what do you want to do with ADODB? We're going to convert it to ADO.net. What do you want to do with on-error goto? Let's look down here under error handling. We're going to convert it to try-catch with lambdas. If we need to know more about that, we can click on this View button. It'll actually give us an idea of what that code is going to look like once we convert it to C#. We need to confirm our options, and then we simply need to upgrade. I'm going to create a Visual Studio 2013 project, and I'm going to say Go. Now this takes a couple of minutes, so we're going to fast forward ahead until it gets done. Okay, we've finished upgrading our SKS project to C#.net. We've created a Visual Studio 2013 solution file. Let's look and see what we've created here. Here's all of our code, and here is the solution file that we've created. So let's open up Visual Studio and take a look at what we've done now. You'll see multiple projects in your solution directory. They include some support files as well. These are all in source code. We call them helper classes, and because there's no binaries, you can modify them as you need to, or at least you can understand what it is that we've done. It's just to make some of the migration stuff a little more straightforward for you looking at the new code. You can see we've migrated all of our VB forms to C# code. We've migrated our VB code files and modules to C# files. You can see that we've added some comments. We've also left all the existing comments, and any symbol names have not changed as well. So we have a nice .NET application here. Let's just build it really quickly and take a look at it and see what it looks like when it runs. Remember, everything's been modified now to run in .NET and use WinForms. Okay, I paused that while we were building. It's all finished now. Let's take a look at the app. And here it is, and of course it looks almost exactly like the VB app. We try not to change the user interface any more than we have to, because you don't want to have to retrain your employees on how to use this application once it's been migrated to .NET. So there's nothing new here. Again, this tool set and this capability has been around for years. What's new is let's take this from a client-server .NET application all the way to a cloud-enabled modern web application using HTML5 and JavaScript on the client side, C# on the back end, model view, view model, and so forth. Before we do that, let me walk you through a little picture that shows what we're going to do and how we do it. Here's a quick look at the first step of what we have just accomplished. We took a VB6 application which uses VB code, VB syntax, VB forms sitting on top of the VB runtime, very traditional way to expedite creating a Windows application. And using the VBUC, the Visual Basic Upgrade Companion, we've migrated it to a .NET application. All the VB code is now C# code. There's no more VB code left in our application. The forms have all been converted to WinForms, and all the runtime calls have been converted to .NET. So in effect, we have replaced the entire application with a new set of sources. We won't be using the old source code at all. We can put it in the round file. We can put it in the archive. We're not using it anymore. Now, suppose we wanted to make this a modern web application. How would we go about that? First thing that we're going to do is we're going to take all of the user interface code and we're going to strip it out of the application. We're going to recreate it in HTML5 with JavaScript and CSS for layout. So it's green on here to indicate new code. The red indicates the existing code that we already had. Next, we're going to cloud enable all of the database connections and external connections by basically abstracting them so that the connections are not hard-coded. So there we're going to actually create some new code and change a little bit of the existing business logic rules that we have in our C# backend code. Next, we're going to create a view model representation on both sides. We're going to use model view, view model on the client, and we're going to use ASP.NET MVC on the backend side. We have to synchronize the client with the server side, the cloud-enabled backend, so that we can make sure that the views on each side are always in synchronization. Furthermore, we're going to write some code to minimize the amount of data that has to get transferred to refresh the views. So we have to manage the state and we have to manage the delta in the state and the delta in the views so that we can be efficient about updating this. We plumb these two together and connect them with things like JSON and AJAX over HTTP. We then wrap all of the backend code in ASP.NET to make it a web server, and we have a modern web application. Now, everything that I showed you from here to here is done automatically with our newest tool, WebMap. And I'm going to show you that right now. We're going to take the C#.NET application, SKS.NET, that we just created with VBUC. We're going to run it through WebMap, and we're going to come out with this architecture right here. So let's take a look at that. WebMap is the latest product from Mobilize.net. It's now currently in beta, and we will be releasing it shortly. Let's see what it looks like. We're going to create a new... Let's see what it looks like. We're going to create a new WebMap project, and we'll call it SKS Web. Because it's a demo, we get to use one of these two demo apps only, and we'll change the output directory. Okay. Now, when we look at our configuration, we can optimize for side or speed. When we optimize for speed, we will generate the maximum amount of code for the client in JavaScript, basically to handle any form authentication or validation stuff, rather than make a server round trip for that. Well, all we're going to do now is just run it, It just takes a moment or two. Now that the migration is done, let's take a look at our result. We have a Solution Explorer here that shows the old project and the new project, and you can see that we've added a third project here. We can look at the differences between them. There's a lot of files here. Let's do this. Let's click on Related Files down here and then pick one. And we can see that for this particular form, this request approval form, we have a C# file, but we also have a controller and a view model. Over here on the right, we see the original C# code, and we see the modified code. Let's click on this selector down here, highlight changes, and now we can see through this diff indication what's new and what's been changed. And when we come down here, you can see that we're now using view models for a lot of the user interface elements instead of accessing them directly. So this browser view, this comparator view, allows you to learn how your code has changed in this new representation, which is very different from your typical desktop-only client-server application, because we've configured it now to handle all the vagaries of an application that has to run over the World Wide Web. Let's finish, load it into Visual Studio, and see what we get. Here we are in Visual Studio. You can see our solution over here. Let's collapse everything. And let's start by taking the website project and let's make it the startup project. The next thing we want to do basically is just build it. So we're going to do a rebuild, make sure we get a clean build, and let it go. Let's fast forward a little bit. Alright, the build is finished, and we'll run it in Internet Explorer on localhost on this machine. And here we are. Now what we've done that's interesting here is that we have recreated the look and feel of an MDI application running in a browser window. So the users that are familiar with this product, with this application rather, will not need to be retrained. It looks very familiar to them. They can just deploy it with a link and they're off and running. So we've used Kendo UI for a lot of these UI elements and to create our MVBC. We've used Unity on the back end for some of the framework stuff. There's a lot of modern technology in here, but it's all designed to make this work very easily on the web. Let's shut this down for a moment and take a look at what we've got. We've got some helper classes here. Again, they're all in C#. They're all source code. You can take a look at them. We have our SKS project. Now we've created controllers and views as well as some scripting we've done, so it's a little richer than it was before. And we've got, of course, our website project down here where we have all of our HTML, we have a lot of our JavaScript, and some of these elements, as well as the CSS files for styling and layout. Now, having this run on localhost isn't very interesting because we still have something that's tied to one computer, which is what we had before when it was running in .NET and accessing a local database. So let's do something now. I'm going to copy the database up to the cloud. In this case, I'm going to use Azure, the Microsoft Cloud Service. And I'm going to change the connection strings in here to that database. So I've copied the database offline up to an account that we set up on Azure. And what I'll do now is I'll go in and I'll change all of the connection strings from the local database to the cloud database. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll actually take this entire web application, we'll put it up on the cloud, so now it can be accessed by many people at the same time from anywhere. So hang on a second. Okay, well, looking in our SKS project, here's the find and replace. We're going to use regular expressions. We're basically just finding that local connection string and replacing it with some information that points to a cloud-hosted database. So we're going to replace all of those occurrences. There's 4 of them. We're going to close that, and we're going to rebuild our solution now with the different connections to the database. Okay, that's done, and let's run it again. There won't be anything new here to see. It's still running on localhost, as you can see. The difference is that it's now accessing the data over the internet, because the database that it's looking at, when I click on this, is not on my local machine. It's actually up in the cloud. Okay, so let's do the last step here, which is we're going to take the website and we're going to publish it to the cloud. And what we'll do is we'll use a profile. We'll use this profile file that I've got, and we'll say OK, and we'll click Next. And now I want this to be a debug version, not a release version. And we'll say Publish. Again, we're going to fast forward over this a little bit. It takes a moment. Here we are up and running, and you can see from the URL that we are running on Azure in a hosted cloud environment. You can also see that the application works fine. It's exactly the same as it was on localhost. It's exactly the same it was on .NET, and it's basically exactly the same as it was on VB. So there you have it. In 20 minutes, we've gone from VB to .NET C#, and then from C# .NET WinForms to HTML5, hosted on Azure, a modern web architecture with model view, view model architecture, synchronization, the whole enchilada. So this is a pretty interesting transformation that was done very quickly and very efficiently using automation. Furthermore, we can bring them all up. We can start with the VB one. Here it is right here. We can go to the .NET version. Here it is right here, looking pretty much exactly like the other one. And then we can go to the Internet Explorer one, the web version, and it looks very much like the other 3. Here they all are side by side. Hard to tell which is which, almost impossible actually. It's that clean a migration. So if you have any more questions, be sure to contact us at mobilize.net, www.mobilize.net, or give us a call. Thanks very much for watching.